we want innovation. We want to be an environment that allows people to innovate, and the law is infrastructure for that. It's a matter of structural incentives driving better behavior. The ideal is you get products that are focused on promoting human flourishing.
Change is constant.
I think we need to win because there's such a difference in the fundamental architecture of how this technology is going to play out.
We welcome Roudi and Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti to the stage.
I like to mix it up just a little bit. I thought I'd bring my personal attorney here, everybody, just to make sure we were okay. Thank you for coming. No, it's been so fun getting to know you and your team, Attorney General Skrmetti. By the way, it's also awesome that I can call you General. I mean, how cool a title is that? But no, you've come to the park and you've spent such great time with us in the Bitcoin community. I thought for the folks here, just to get to know you a little bit more, how much Bitcoin do you own?
Microscopic amount.
But you have a really interesting Bitcoin story, if you don't mind just sharing with us.
It's such a tragedy, and I know you hear these stories all the time. All the time. It's 2011. I was playing too much World of Warcraft at the time. And on the message board, these guys start talking about Bitcoin and, the white paper and how great it's going to be. And, you just need to, when your computer's running, you just in the background, you can do this mining. But there was also I think it was the Study for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which was this altruistic use of the downtime on your computer. And there was a protein folding thing too, where, you can donate your compute time to these causes. I'm pretty sure neither of those has amounted to the discovery of aliens or a solution to cancer. So I probably would have been better off going in the other direction. I know some people who did, who are really differently lifestyle than I am right now. But yeah, I whiffed on that one.
Well, I will say this, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way. I think you're a super nerd. There's Jeff Lyash, that was a super nerd. He came by the park. He was the former chairman and CEO of TVA. I love that my politicians, and especially in the state of Tennessee, are super smart, incredibly intelligent, and also very curious. When you came to the park, the couple times you've been there and spent quite a bit of time, I just felt that you had an insatiable curiosity just to learn a bit more about Bitcoin, but now we're going to be broadening it out with the summit here today across AI, energy, and freedom tech. I am curious though, and maybe we can start with kind of where we are today. I have a lot of friends that are free and open source developers. They're working all over. Stephanie Coleman was kind enough to be here earlier on and mentioned there's a number of people from all around the world that are coming to Nashville, Tennessee just to participate in our community. And they're just writing code. They're just writing code. So I'd be curious if they were coming to you and saying, Attorney General Skrmetti, should I feel safe writing code here in the United States of America?
Yeah, we want innovation. We want to be an environment that allows people to innovate, and the law is infrastructure for that. We've got a culture in Tennessee, in Nashville, that is very dynamic. You know it, you feel it every day. People want to change the world. They want to come in and have the opportunity to do their thing around other people that are doing the same thing. We need a legal infrastructure that provides for that, and we work really hard to do it. We want to be the most business-friendly, most innovation-friendly state that we can possibly be. We got great leadership from the governor, great leadership from the legislature, and there's an attorney general's office that does not want to stomp out people who are in good faith trying to innovate. So, when people come over here, we want to ensure that they have those opportunities and that they're not feeling constrained by the law. The law needs to set guardrails. There need to be clear guardrails known in advance so people know, what would constitute fraud, for instance. But within the confines of that, we want people, I'm not capable of saying which are good ideas, which are bad ideas, which should succeed and which shouldn't. We want to create an environment where market forces, where individual creativity, where synergies between different innovators can bring everybody flourishing.
And just for the folks that may not know, what makes maybe your office a little bit more unique against the other 49 states that you're looking to do? And how big is your office even, by the way?
So we have about 200 attorneys right now.
I promise I pay my taxes. Good, just in case.
We're a full-service legal operation, so people sue the state as frequently happens. We defend it, but we do consumer protection, antitrust, constitutional litigation, tax law, everything.
Right.
But in Tennessee, the Attorney General is appointed by the state Supreme Court. So in most states, it's elected, and the incentives just drive different behavior. I mean, the incentives for me are to be nerdy and reasonably easy to get along with. And it's an 8-year term in Tennessee. So I don't have to worry about scrambling for a few years to hit some inflection point. 8 years is a lot of runway. It's a lot of time to promote stability, to give people good ideas of what to expect. And the continuity and the stability and the clarity all are part of what contributes to making Tennessee such a great place to innovate.
Let's continue that. And I have so many friends that want to do more business here in the state of Tennessee. So we got a lot of my friends that are setting up their Bitcoin-focused businesses. They're setting up their AI and Bitcoin-focused data center businesses here in the state of Tennessee. What would you tell them on why Tennessee, let's say specifically, or why the U.S. would be a great place to continue to invest? Because they could pick up and go, and what's really cool about it is they can go pick up and go anywhere. My friend Eric Hirschman's out in Nairobi, Kenya, and all of Africa, building out a great business over there. They can go anywhere. Why here?
Well, I mean, I think Tennessee in particular has some advantages that make it a really sensible place for more data centers. One, we've got an incredible energy infrastructure. TVA is a phenomenal entity. It is primed for growth. It's looking at nuclear in the next few years, but also nuclear in the next few decades. They're looking at fission, they're looking at fusion, they're looking at alternative energy sources. And because of the way it's structured, again, it's a matter of structural incentives driving better behavior. They're not as focused on the short-term outcomes. They need to be reliable and resilient, and they do it. We also have the #1 logistics hub in the hemisphere in Memphis. You can get essentially anything in the world within 96 hours in Memphis. FedEx is there. It's the second busiest cargo airport in the world. The intermodal opportunities are huge. You got the Mississippi River right there. The Memphis aquifer and the river create a great water infrastructure. Geographically, you're located very centrally. And then the state as a whole is really committed to a regulatory regime that is favorable to people trying new things, favorable to people starting businesses. We benefit from the country that we're in, but we also benefit from having a state regime that I think is more competitive than any of the alternatives.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it's a benefit, the 96 hours. I'm just thinking about it. The good thing is I think my wife is picking up our other 3 kids right now, but those Amazon boxes coming like every single day is maybe not the best, but I digress. Competition and competitiveness. You mentioned that a little bit. I am curious because the title of this panel is Imagine If America Leads. One question I'm kind of struggling with is around competition. I love competition. I'm just curious, do we have to win in the AI, energy, and Bitcoin spaces, or do we just need everybody to kind of play the game?
I mean, I think we need to win because there's such a difference in the fundamental architecture of how this technology is going to play out between the U.S. approach and the China approach. Yeah. China is certainly a serious competitor, but it really comes down to whether you have the more individual focus that leaves room for innovation, that leaves room for people to try different things, to exchange different ideas, to live their lives, or whether you're using that architecture to drive people in a particular direction. So one of them is much more organic and bottom up, very similar to the Bitcoin ecosystem. The other is very centralized and very, very deterministic in its approach to outcomes, which in the long run limits opportunities for prosperity. So, I mean, I hope we see economic success around the world. I hope we see opportunities for people to flourish around the world. But the best way to do that is to ensure that the infrastructure underlying all of the success, the energy infrastructure, but especially the technology, is geared in a way to promote freedom.
Is there anything we can do we have I would say a more friendly government right now towards Bitcoin and freedom technologies than previously, but that just changes over time. Not getting on one side or the other, but change is constant. Is there anything that you think about from a regulatory framework that we can implement now such that it doesn't matter who's in office the next term or the next term after that? That's something I'm thinking quite a bit about, is especially with the way Bitcoin is structured with their open source software. It's permissionless, it's voluntary to participate. I'm curious on the open governance or regulatory framework that you could potentially implement at the state or even the federal level if you're there.
Yeah, I think because we're in a very early phase of this technology, there are a lot of opportunities to bake into the bones of both the technology itself and the regulatory structure a pro-freedom bias. And we've seen efforts to go in the other direction. When Google launched Gemini, the initial launch was kind of embarrassing because they had tried to bake in a lot of concepts into it. It was replete with sort of the DEI paradigm in a way that stunted its ability to do its job well. I think if we avoid imposing any political constraints on the foundational technology, and make sure that we're creating systems both legally and technologically that let people go in whatever direction they want to go to.
Do you think you need to regulate the entity, or do you think you can just have a free and open market competition such that the open source LLMs will compete against the closed source LLMs? And I think there's some folks from Google in the audience that'll probably want to come up to you and talk to you afterwards. But maybe they have a competitive opportunity and people want to gravitate towards that, for a lack of a better term, biased AI. But then there's all these other alternatives. Is it more on the regulatory side, or do you think it's like on more of a free open market competition just to let the market compete?
I think open market competition almost universally drives better outcomes, except when there's significant market distortion. And with the resource requirements for the big LLMs, there's a relatively high degree of consolidation in the market. It depends on just how consolidated it gets, but it can be a problem if there are only a few players. And as there's less and less competition, as they get more and more settled in the position that they're in of extreme market dominance, that can produce some bad behavior. We've seen it in tech in other instances, not to pick on Google, but there's been litigation about that. It's not that these are bad companies, it's just if competition isn't allowed to regulate behavior in a way that drives the market toward benefiting consumers, then that's one of the instances where some degree of state intervention makes sense. But of course, the flip side is, I don't have any idea how to succeed with one of these companies, right? Like if I did, I'd have a much nicer car. But we can't micromanage, we can't try to regulate to a really granular degree.
Because we just don't know.
Yeah, we just don't know. We want people to be able to come up with the solutions rather than people who have no idea what they're talking about imposing solutions from the outside.
This is a bit random, but I'm curious, do you actually use AI or any of this stuff internally in the office? Are you guys thinking about how do you guys use the AI?
So we're looking at some different products, and I think the legal industry is primed for significant disruption from AI. It's a terrible time to be a young lawyer in private practice. Probably a worse time to be a law student if you're not going into government work. There's a lot that it can do, and the pace of acceleration is just insane. 2 years ago, you would laugh at like the video output you get. Now it looks like a Hollywood movie based on like 4 words. That
my friend Marty here developed a movie. Sorry to cut you off.
Sure.
He did it, and I'm going to butcher his numbers, but he did it with like 2 people. He spent, I think, 24 hours and maybe a few $100. And it was insanely high quality. It had millions of views. Insane. And he did it like that. Like, what does now it leads to another question. What does the world look like in this future world? Like, put on your dad hat for a second, and you're thinking about your kids for a second. That's why, honestly, one of the reasons why I wanted to do Imagine If was thinking about my children's children. What is the world that they're going to be inheriting and living in? And I feel like we're at this kind of like fork in the road, especially as you mentioned, this closed source and open source opportunities, free market and closed market opportunities. Maybe out of curiosity, where do you see the world going?
So, it's a huge inflection point right now. We could end up with a world where people are like connected to the dopamine machine and just like doom scrolling 18 hours a day, supported by an economy that's automated enough.
Like you were in 2011 with your gaming and playing Bitcoin?
I was a very active federal employee at the time, but I had no personal life. So, a lot of road trips with a lot of time to kill. No, so like there's the downside there. Of course, there's like the Terminator scenario where like we weaponize it and the drones are out killing anybody who's got strong opinions and articulates them. But the ideal is you get products that are focused on promoting human flourishing, and then everybody who's got an idea for a great movie has the resources available to produce in a way that we've never seen at scale before. And in theory, that could create something that just dwarfs the Renaissance in terms of human flourishing, human activity, people having the opportunity to connect with one another through art, people who have the resources to help them learn more. I mean, just constant lifelong learning in ways that we couldn't previously imagine. You could have your own set of Oxford tutors in your pocket. So there is huge potential upside. And part of it is like the cultural decision that we make now in terms of what direction this goes. We need to give people opportunities to succeed. And I guess the one other alternative is the extremely striated society, where you have people who are doing the flourishing, and then you have the dopamine addicts. That is obviously not a great outcome. And I think we need to be careful that we're looking to ensure, that people aren't commodified in unfair ways as this technology ramps up.
Curiosity, what are some ways? Because I do get worried about that, where it's like, you're just chain smoking Netflix and you're just like, got the feeder tube in, it's Friday night and so on. What are some ways that you imagine that we can solve this?
Well, we've seen some hints with social media where there was a lot of internal awareness early on that there were downsides, especially for kids, when engagement got turned up too high, right? And these are like the most refined products ever. I imagine the AI products will ultimately be even more refined than those. And so the companies themselves were aware that they were hurting consumers, and there were steps they could have taken to mitigate the risks. And there was transparency that could have happened that did not happen. So at the very least, the people who have the most data about the impact of these products need to be highlighting risks and throwing flags when there appear to be big problems.
We've already self-regulation's a more of a...
Yes. Yeah. And if they don't, then that's when the government steps in. But I mean, I would hope that given the amount of potential prosperity for the companies here, they will perhaps be motivated to find the best long-term play and not focus on, massive engagement to harmful and ruinous extremes early on.
Yeah. And I know we got a few more minutes, but I do want to touch on, you mentioned you're mining off your laptop. Just a few years ago, all my Bitcoin mining friends were getting just blasted for, boiling the oceans. Bitcoin mining is bad. But now you enter these AI data centers, it's like, we need more energy, more energy. And you mentioned kind of the TVA, and I feel like we have an unfair advantage here in Tennessee especially. Could you maybe expand on that a little bit more? Because I really want my friends, especially around the world, to imagine how amazing the opportunities are that could be here, potentially in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, so I mean, in Tennessee, our energy infrastructure is geared towards tomorrow. I mean, you're not looking at the manipulation of markets and infrastructure to get short-term benefits for shareholders. There's nothing wrong with benefiting shareholders, but for a fundamental piece of infrastructure like that, you really need to have vision and you really need to commit to the long term. And we have institutional incentives pointed in that direction. So, we're working on being the nuclear capital of the world. Yeah. And I think we're making some pretty good progress in that direction. We're also looking at every possible alternative. The mountains that act as batteries are my favorite. I just think it's really cool.
Well, expand on that? The mountains?
Yeah, when you have excess energy.
You can nerd out. Let's go.
Yeah, when you have excess energy, you pump water up a mountain. When you need more energy, it comes down, you got hydropower. It's a great way of managing the load. And we've got some really good operations here in that regard. But I mean, we recognize as a state, from the governor on down, if we don't have the power for people to do what they need to do, they're not going to be able to do what they need to do. And there is so much incredible prosperity for the state being in the middle of all this. And we don't want to be like a wasteland of data centers and solar panels, but we won't be. We'll have power. We'll have our industrial locations that let people do that. But the quality of life here is phenomenal too. I mean, people are moving here separate and apart from the economic opportunities, and they'll keep doing that. We have a lot to offer, but no other state that I'm aware of is as fixated on ensuring that we solve the power problem.
Yeah, and last time I was looking at the research from TVA that were kind enough to share with us, the energy mix is pretty remarkable here. And maybe to kind of close, nuclear is so interesting to me. That's why, we're so kind to have Matt, the Chief Nuclear Officer here from TVA, and a number of the folks that are in the nuclear space from fusion, fission, stuff that's way above my pay grade. Maybe in closing, if you're kind of dreaming a little bit, where do you see massive opportunities for individuals, families, as well as businesses here in Tennessee, as well as the U.S.?
So I'm going to take 1 minute of personal privilege to say, my dad was a nuclear guy.
Of course he was.
He enlisted in the Navy. He worked nukes. Then he built reactors for subs. Then he got his doctorate in psychology doing cognitive neuroscience and was an AI researcher. So this is my genetic wheelhouse right here. But the future is going to be built in these incredible, ephemeral, virtual products. But there's got to be a physical layer to that. And Tennessee is primed to be the physical layer. And no matter what awesome things people are doing on top, there's going to be a dependency on that. And if we can provide a really solid foundation for all that development and provide people opportunities with appropriate regulatory schemes to just take off, build on that foundation as high as they can possibly go, we're benefiting at the top and at the bottom. That creates all sorts of opportunities for all sorts of different people. There will be opportunities for folks in the trades. There will be opportunities for very sophisticated engineers, sophisticated attorneys, sophisticated entrepreneurs. So, the whole state, top to bottom, will benefit if we do it right.
How many more years do you have in your term?
5 more.
Let's go. Can you guys give him a huge round of applause?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.